Hello everybody, Blake Rudis here. Welcome to day 28 of the 30 days, 30 critique sessions. We are in the home stretch. We are about to screech in hot. I can't wait. I'm really excited about this. Honestly, I've had a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So I am ready for some rest, but no sleep for the weary right now, right? Let's keep pressing on. We do have an image today from Ray Grace, F64 Elite member Ray Grace. I'm looking forward to looking into this because looks to me like it's an infrared image. We haven't looked at that yet. And we do have a twist. It's a pretty good one from Gary, another F64 Elite member. But before we get into that, John Chambers, an F64 Elite member, shares this. Great stuff about this stuff that was going on with selective color yesterday. But what I wanted to showcase here is what Blake is showing here on his YouTube channel is very good, but doesn't compare to the content he puts out regularly on his F64 Elite teaching platform. Now, with the recently introduced monthly vision sessions, F64 Elite is the place to be if you are serious about taking your images to the next level. And I love that from John. Thank you, John. Here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize this. I get shitted on every single day. And, you know, I know what you're thinking. You thought I said something else. The thing is, I get these emails that say, Blake, you should do this, or Blake, you should do that. Recently, this last weekend, I got several emails that said, Blake, you should put out a monthly Photoshop tip on your YouTube channel that's really challenging, that challenges us just like your challenges do. Well, guess what? I do that on F64 Elite every month. And then I got another one that said, Blake, you should show us full workflows of how you think about your work through your vision. And guess what? I already do that too. It's on F64 Elite. And guess what? I also do it with the members and help them through their images through exactly what John pointed out here, the vision sessions. So if you're one of those people who's thinking Blake should do something, I'm going to say you should join F64 Elite because I've probably already done it. All right, so now we have our twist. Correct color and tone in image only using levels. This is what I love about Gary. Gary Shira he's a man of few words, right? But his words, they're good. So we're going to get into this one. Even though we have a black and white image today, I can still show you how to use levels for the correction that I'm going to do there. And I can even talk about color when it comes to that too. We just won't be working on a colored image. So let's get into the critique. This image comes from F64 Elite member Ray Grace, and I like this image because to me it looks like an infrared photo. I could be wrong, but it does look like infrared. Typically when you photograph in infrared, specifically for black and white, what'll happen is the foliage actually turns like a whitish color because in infrared, light is reflected differently than in the visible light spectrum. Now, this is happening every day, always around you, right? There is UV reflectance that's happening. There's infrared reflectance that's happening. There's visible light, but all our eyes are capable of seeing is visible light. So you have to do some special modifications to your camera to remove the infrared blocker and sometimes even the UV blocker, and then you can control what kind of light comes into your camera. I have a couple infrared converted cameras and have experimented with that in the past. But the image at hand, I like it because what it does is it takes chaos, especially in the woods, and kind of just makes it soft and delicate. You've heard me many times talk about how difficult it is to photograph in the woods, and it is. But with infrared, it can do some interesting things because we aren't used to seeing things that way. So when a viewer sees an infrared image, there's this immediate connection that's like, whoa. And the reason why is because it's almost like a dream, right? So even the colors in the infrared spectrum do some really funky things and can be really beautiful. And you can push them and pull them in different directions that you can't with visible light. So what I like about this image is you're taking us down this path right here, right? And I stop and I see this circular thing. I think the name of the image was actually focused on this wheel right here. But I can kind of walk down this path and navigate my way through this. And if you've ever seen the end of the first Gladiator movie, I believe that was photographed or videoed in infrared. So this actually kind of feels like that too. It's kind of got this dream sequence to it. I feel like I'm looking at something that I've never seen before. And that's the unique beauty of infrared photography. The disconnect with that is that now we have a lot of white. And white is a navigating element. It drives the viewer's eye in and around the image. So if you have a lot of white and you really only have midtone because your darks aren't really there, I don't have any boundaries or barriers. So this just lets my eye just be free to roam all throughout the image. So let's see if we can carve a nice little path through here. I'm less focused on this wheel in this critique than I am just the scene as a whole, because to me this is about the scene as a whole and not about this. If it was about just this wheel here, I probably would have cropped in on just that spot or been a little bit more deliberate in camera for that to be the main star of the show. But for me, this is the entire scene. So I was going to use a gradient on this, and what I wanted to do was have a gradient that would transition from the bottom and be darker at the bottom and transition up to the top and be lighter. Because the way I see it, you see how there's like this band of gray that's up here right here? That band of gray is actually keeping my eye stuck down here. And I kind of want to be lifted up and out of this because there's some real beauty that's happening in this top half of the image if we let this breathe. But down here, it's like you're forcing me to stay down in this chaos. And I don't want to stay in here, to be honest with you. I want to have a path to get me out of this so that I can be lifted up into this space. But I can't because you've got this blackish kind of boundary right here that's keeping me stuck here. I can try this. Let's put on a tone evaluation. You can kind of see it. The dark, almost the darkest dark area is that strip up there. There's a little bit of speckled dark area here, which is what we would expect, but we don't expect to see that up here. Okay, so instead of using a gradient to lighten up the top and darken down the bottom, I have to use levels. And that's okay, because levels will work just fine. Instead of using one gradient, though, I'm going to have to use 2 levels. So levels, there's a lot of confusion about what levels are versus what something like curves is. So let me just be really frank about this, and it'll actually come together really quickly. To me, I think curves is a 3-dimensional way of working with your tonal data. You have your darkest darks here, your midtones here, and your lights here. So if you pull this down, it's going to make your darker areas dark, right? And then you pull this down, it makes your midtones darker. Now, levels are slightly different in that we only have these 3 triangles to work with right here. And then we have our output levels down here also. But this is the main focus right here, these 3 triangles on this x-axis here. Here we have an x and y axis, and we pull this and move this from the left and the right hand sides. That's essentially what curves does. So curves, if we pull this, it's going to give us almost the exact same thing as if we come over to levels and pull this way, okay? So to me, curves is just a 3-dimensional way of working. Now, when I go into levels, where's the midtone control? Well, the midtone control is right here. We can either force the midtones to be darker by basically, the way I remember this is we're taking the darker area and we're pulling it into the lighter area, or we're using the midtones to pull them into the brighter area. So we're taking more brightness and pulling it into the dark area. And that's essentially, it's a very, very simple way of working with tonal data compared to curves. Curves always throws everyone for a loop. Now, on the flip side of that, we also have our R, G, and B curves. Let me see here, channel-wise, I think this image mode, this is an RGB image. But if we go into our RGB channels here, into the red, we pull it this way, it's going to make it more cyan. Okay, so it does work this way. So I can show you that too. We pull it this way and it makes it more red. Okay, now I'm not working on a color image, so I don't want to add color to this, but what I want to show you here is that this is very similar to working with curves when you step into the RGB curve and you pull it up to get more red and pull it down to get more cyan. Here, we're taking the opposite of white, which is black, which would be, this would be your red control, and this is your cyan control. And then over here we have our magenta control and our green control. And then in the midtones, we get to pull which way we want that color to be. So I'm not talking about color today because we are in a black and white image, but I wanted to show that because the idea was, how would you color correct with levels? Well, I would use it the same way that I use curves, just not in that 3-dimensional way where I can pull the curve and manipulate it in a much more finessed way. So now I need to make 2 levels. I'm gonna make a dark levels, and I'm going to just invert this later and make a light levels. But essentially what I want to do is incorporate more dark area into this space in the foreground. So the way I'm going to do that is just grab our darkest darks here and pull them over. Now I'm basically clipping in the darkest dark areas and making them much darker. So I'm basically telling zone 0, or the blackest, darkest things in my image, which would be this right here, to then move over. And now I'm telling anything that would be in zone 1, which would be our next stage up of black, to become black. So this is what happens when this is called clipping. We're telling that data to become black. And you can see here that there's really no data in this space. So as I move this over, it's actually a pretty good idea because it's making this area darker. But what's it doing to the sky? Making it darker too. That's our issue. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just move this over just like this, okay, like that, and get a little bit more darkness down in this space. You see, I don't want the eye to stay around too long in here. So if I darken it down, we won't want to stay too long in there. Now, I don't like that the top of the image is getting too dark. So basically, what is a gradient? Okay, if I was to make a gradient adjustment layer, we can do the same thing with the gradient tool in Photoshop. So if I click on the mask, and then I click on the gradient tool, and I have this set to a linear gradient, and that linear gradient is set to black to transparency, just like this. If I click right here and press and hold shift and move this down, shift, just make sure I'm maintaining a straight line or a 15-degree angle as I move this. You see, that'll make that top half darker. If I press Control H, it gives me a guide, and then I can move this up to get exactly where I want. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm making this gradient only affect the bottom area, because this black mask is saying, hey, you can't affect this area up here, okay? So I can't affect that area up there. Now, if I look at this though, and I move this down, see that? I can put it exactly where I want to. So that looks good right there. So now what I'm going to do is look at what I did with the curve. I'm going to duplicate this and invert it. So basically make the opposite and call it light. So Control J, I'll call this light. Okay. And then on the mask, Control I to invert. And then I'm just going to do the opposite. So instead of pulling my darkest darks over, I'm going to do the opposite. So I can just reset this, completely reset this, and I'll pull the lights over just a little bit, but just pull those lights more into those darker areas. I don't need to clip in that much highlight, because you see that's where the data actually starts, is right there. So I'll clip it into where the data starts so I get pure white, and then I can move this over to get the eye into that space. So now look at this, before, after. You see, before we're stuck down here, as if this is the most interesting thing, but I want to navigate through this. So let me now go onto this mask here, B for the brush tool, and I'm just going to delicately brush with black in this area and carve a little path here. Now, if I wanted to, I could use one of my blending brushes instead of the big soft brush, and that will help blend in this a little bit more and work a little bit slower here. So I can just paint this in where I want the eye to be able to navigate through in and around this lower area of the image here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now, do we have some more three-dimensionality here is the question. Yes, I believe so. You see, because everything is the same tonal contrast, everything's flat. Now we can get the eye to navigate through this space even more, okay? And if we wanted to, now that it's all identified here, we could even make this darker, okay? And then that would really make sure the eye isn't going into that space, okay? And then with the light area up there, that's looking pretty good up there, so I'm okay with that. Now, there is something odd that's happening in this corner right here. So I would either crop this image to crop that out if this is a keeper for you, or I would use something to cover that up. So C for the crop tool, and I'll just press the Alt or Option key and then the Shift key, and that'll make sure that it stays nice and tight to your aspect ratio when I crop that in. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. We have not seen an infrared black and white image, so I'm glad the randomizer selected this one. Our showcase image comes in from KAREL SCHNECK, and I think this is awesome. This is kind of like the leopard image from a couple, I don't even remember what critique that was. But anyway, we just locked eyes with it. And with this one, it's the same way. I'm peering over the grass, almost as if I'm at the level of this bird. And that's one of the places that I think a lot of people fail with wildlife photography. And for some people, it can be very difficult to get on the ground. Not necessarily to get on the ground, but to get back up after they've gotten on the ground. So it can be hard to get at eye level with a lot of the wildlife that you need to get eye level with. But I think KAREL did a great job here, because you're at the level of this bird, which puts me at eye level with it. So I'm forced to be locked eyes with this bird, very similar to how I was forced to being locked eyes with that, not cheetah, leopard, because everyone loves to tell me that. I don't even know what bird this is. I'm not even going to try. But you've got me locked in on the eye with that. But the thing about this that I think is really good, because what do I always say? And every time I do a wildlife critique, I always look for the sharpness to make sure that that sharpness is in the right place. And one of the reasons why I feel like this feels three-dimensional to me, almost like a pop-up book in a way, and that's a good thing, is the sharpening is on the subject in the best way possible, and then it just kind of tapers off into the foreground, but the background doesn't have any excess sharpening. So it makes it feel as if this bird is really alive and it's being pulled away from its background. And I really enjoy that, because I'm locked eyes with it now. I don't have all this detail all over the place that's trying to draw my attention away from it. So I think you did a wonderful job with that, KAREL, and you've got me locked eyes with this bird, or locked eye, I should say. I've got two eyes locked on that one eye, and I'm not away from that. And that's really cool, because the eye is not dark. You've got a lot of color in there. I can see a gradient that transitions from yellow into red into that eye, which is something that we just don't see very often in wildlife photography. A lot of times that eye turns out too black, but you've done the right ideal processing here to really get me locked in with this. And I think your composition works beautifully. I think that this is just a really well put together wildlife image. So good job, KAREL. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. Okay, so we're back with an updated donation amount. This last weekend, we did not have an update on Sunday because Sunday is pre-recorded, but here we are. We've got a total. Individual donors are in at $5,885, which is awesome. Thank you so much for your generosity. We've got 2 more days left. Actually, this is day 3, so we have 2 more days left, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I'll keep that open so that individuals can still continue to donate, but I just won't be keeping much track anymore. And then from F64 Academy interactions, we've had 1,705. That's awesome. A lot of talk about F64 Elite. 4 people became annual members this weekend, so thank you very much for doing that. I can't wait for you to see what's in there. I really can't. And then we also have the Circle of Dreams Foundation. That was $5,000 that came in not last weekend, but the weekend before, which brings our total for Give Kids Art to $12,590. That is very exciting. That actually gets us to the point where we have now 5 years of programming for 50 to 60 students, because each year of programming comes out to $2,500. So if we do the math there, that's now 5 years for 50 to 60 students, and it's all because of your generosity here on F64 Academy, and I really appreciate you guys. So we have 2 more days left. Give me some good challenges, and if you feel so inclined, in the description below you can find a link to get to Give Kids Art, so if you'd like to donate, you can. And also this Thursday, I've got a big presentation that I'm going to wrap all of this up with called the Vision Path, and if you are on my email list, you will get an email for that this week. So really looking forward to closing this out. I appreciate all of you guys. Close it out with some good challenges. We've got 2 more days left. Let's do this.